Well, welcome everybody. Okay, so with that, I'm going to call the meeting to order. And the first thing we have on our agenda is we need a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting. So if I could get somebody to make a motion and second that, assuming we don't have any additions to the minutes.
This is John Amundson at Wilmette, so moved. Or I guess I propose the motion.
I'll second the motion. It's Liz from Glencoe.
Perfect. All right. Thank you very much. And then before we get started, just want to check, do we have any additions to our agenda for today? Okay. I am hearing quiet. So with that, we'll move on to our first topic, which is that, as Kathleen said, I will be stepping down from past leadership, having done it for the last 3 years, which is kind of surprising that I've been part of this that long. So we do have Jason and Henry moving up into chair and vice chair, which means we do have an opening for secretary. So if you are interested in getting involved, we are looking for a secretary. And I have done it, and it's not too bad since we record the meetings now and we have a template to do the minutes in. So if you're interested, please reach out to Kathleen. We hope that we'll have some takers. I know that also we've had in the past people share that role as well. So if that's the case, if you only want to commit to 2 meetings and there's somebody else who's willing to do the other 2, we might be able to do that as well. Is there anything you need to add to that, Kathleen?
Nope, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So then moving on to the next part of our meeting, we have promoting e-content via PowerPack and Leap. So there was a question about how do you use records from PowerPack or Leap to promote your digital collections during patron interactions? And that's just open, I believe, as a discussion.
Yeah, can I add a little bit of context to that real quick, Meg?
Of course.
Sure. So if you are not already familiar, I'm sure you've seen the catalog be slow, or you've experienced that downtime that we've seen in Leap where things like weren't available for a couple months. We had a lot of downtime. It was very frustrating. And a lot of what would cause that was an e-content load that was happening in the background. And so when we talk about e-content, we're talking about those Overdrive, Canopy, Access 360 records that come into the catalog. And sometimes that would like gum up our overnight jobs, and that would cause that slowness that patrons were experiencing. So what we're looking to understand is, to what extent are those records being used? So Meg, if you don't mind, can I steal the screen here for just a sec?
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay, great.
So let me go back here.
Okay, great. Okay, so for quick context, here's an example of what I'm talking about. So when I talk about an e-content record, I'm talking about in the catalog. Let's say, for example, I'm looking for the book Lessons in Chemistry. An e-record might be something like this, where when I pull that up, I can see the Libby promo button there, or I might see Access 360, I might see Canopy. It's just depending on what I'm looking at. So that's what our patrons will typically see. And then for you as a staff member, let's say you're helping that patron at the desk find the book Lessons in Chemistry, you'll see the book record, but you may also see an ebook or an e-audiobook. And those are what we're calling those e-content records. So what CCS is looking to better understand with open discussion here is, to what extent are you using those as a public services employee or at your public service desk? Do you find that you're almost never using these because you have the patron go directly to the app? Do you rely on these very often for discovery purposes? I'm really looking to get an idea of, at your library, how deeply, if at all, you're interacting with those e-content records to promote and get e-content into the hands of your patrons. So I will leave that question up for discussion, and then I'd like to hear from all of you. And you can share in the chat if you prefer, but otherwise feel free to unmute yourself and say your library and name and respond to that question. So I will stop the share so we can see one another for that discussion.
So this is Henry from Algonquin.
Mhm.
I've found from my interactions with patrons, we tend to use those records primarily as, finding tools for patrons where, if they're looking for the newest Colleen Hoover and all of our physical copies are checked out, they can see that we also have a digital copy. Which then directs them to the apps. Or if we just don't have a copy of whatever they're looking for, a lot of times our digital collection will have less well-known titles. So if there's something that they're looking for that's not in the physical collection, they can still see that we have a digital copy. And even if they don't know how to access the digital copy, it directs them to it gets them to come to a public service desk where we can explain to them what like Libby is, how to use it, and how to access those materials.
Okay. So what I'm hearing at Algonquin then is that it's kind of like a secondary. So you're having that interaction where you interface, the physical copies might be gone, but aha, and then you see like the e-content pieces there. And then when you are saying that the patron is coming to you for that e-content, for context in that, have they seen it in the OPAC at that point, or what has led them to have that discussion with you?
Yeah, so sometimes it'll be somebody, we've got like a OPAC right in front of our desk. So sometimes
Okay.
a patron will be searching for a title and they'll see that we've got a digital copy and they turn around, they come to the desk and they're like, how do I find this item?
Okay.
Like, what does this mean? And we can look up the record and show them like, oh, this actually isn't a physical book. This is a digital copy. So, if you download the Libby app, you can do that. So that's typically how those interactions would take place a lot of times. It's just somebody discovering the record in the OPAC and then coming to us to find out like, how do I access this?
Okay. Great. So it's a conversation starter. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm at Glencoe and we use it for pretty much the same thing. It's not our go-to method of getting an item and, getting the item for the person. We are just finishing, New Tourist is finishing up exams. And so we did use it a number of times this past weekend for kids who needed copies of books that we didn't have. So we did a lot of Greek mythology books this weekend that happened to just be on Libby. But for us, it's more of it's not the first choice. It's, we will do it as kind of, I don't want to say a last resort, but it's kind of a last resort.
So it sounds like for you that it was a case of like you didn't necessarily have the as many Greek mythology books as you needed, but it's like, oh, hey, kind of almost like backstock. Like we have these digital ones, and then you're able to point students to that space.
Right. It was like looking at the backlist.
Okay, no, that's helpful. Okay.
That's how we used it.
Okay, perfect. I also see in the comments, Marina from Round Lake says it's the same experience at Round Lake. And then Emily, I'm sorry, I don't know your library offhand. I want to say Park Ridge. Okay, that's what I thought. She says, I don't have a mic, but I use the e-content records to identify what titles are owned and in which digital library so that I can direct a patron to the right app. Okay, so it sounds like in that situation and a lot of others, it's a jumping off place. That said, if you didn't have those records, so it sounds like you wouldn't know you have those things. You'd have to go searching in each app to discover. Okay, thanks, Emily. I see you're saying exactly. Okay, I also see Michelle saying, my audio is not working for me today. I work in the children's department. For me, I primarily mentioned that it is available to families when the book is not in stock. Since it is kids, it is hit and miss if they are planning to go and use it. Okay, so you don't necessarily have a way to say like whether or not they used it, but you've had that conversation. So it very much sounds like you're using the records as a marketing tool for your different e-content services. But it's not the first space that you go to. I guess my other question then is, typically when you are using these, are you finding the e-records through your searches in Leap, or are you doing so via like a front end search and pack with your patron? Okay, Michelle says both. Okay, thanks, Michelle. Let me see, and Weber, I think this is Nancy Weber. I don't think, oh, we got a lot coming all of a sudden. I'm sorry, bear with me here. I don't think it is the first choice for staff. However, there are patrons that use it regularly. Mary Kay at Niles says Power Pack. And then Emily says, anecdotally, what's frustrating for patrons that I help with the pack is that the e-content records always show up first over print. Okay, that's interesting feedback. I would be interested in hearing more. Mary Kay at Niles, I don't know if you are able to unmute yourself or if you want to type up, but I had a follow-up for you. I wanted to ask with Power Pack, is that where you're with a patron and you've done that search in Power Pack together, or are they bringing you that search and saying, hey, this exists, where can I find it?
It's more, honestly, I haven't done it with patrons very much because
Okay.
I'm not at the desk quite as much anymore. But
Okay.
when I'm looking, I do to see if there's something available, I do look through the Power Pack. And it does, I think somebody mentioned that they're the first records that pop up, and that is
Mhm.
something that I've noticed. Good for when I'm checking to see if it's available, electronically, not so great if I really want to get just to the books.
Okay. And it sounds like that's echoed by other folks as well. Dawn at Crystal Lake saying it's frustrating you can't filter out e-content. And then Liz and Emily both saying it's frustrating that that's prioritized over the print materials. Okay, that's not feedback I had expected on getting. So it's nice to have that.
Can I ask, Kathleen, is that
Yes.
because of is it in order of when the records were entered into the system?
So there is a slider, and it literally is just like a slider on the back side in admin where it is between relevance and between popularity, and it's how you're filtering your results. So if you do a search in your pack, typically the search results are going to go by popularity. So it's what's searched for and accessed most often. So that is why sometimes you'll see those e-content records float to the top. So it's a matter of like relevance versus popularity. And sometimes if something is newer, it's been accessed more times, so you'll see it float up top. But what I'm hearing from like a staff perspective is that getting those e-content records up first isn't necessarily what you always want to see. Like it's a matter of like, I want the print. How do I find the print?
Got it. Thanks.
Okay. And then I have from Emily, it would be wonderful if all the formats of a title were under one record. I could not agree more. That would be great. That was something that was sort of nice about Vega when we first were previewing that, is that we did have those content roll-ups that pull everything together. Okay, so that's sort of what I was looking for. I just wanted to know if those records were helpful or hindering. Correct me if I'm wrong. I just want to like sum up the conversation so I'm accurately capturing what folks have said. So if this sounds wrong, please feel free to open it wide up in the comments or let me know. But it sounds like the priority is discovering those print materials, and the e-content is nice to have, but you use it more as like a supplement when there are not print materials available or physical materials right in front of you with patrons. And it can be a bit of a marketing tool. But for the most part, we're looking for print things when we use that Power Pack or we use Leap. Okay. And I have another thought floating in from Emily. She says, another thought, unless you have your search limited to your library holdings, it's very easy to accidentally pull up an e-title that another library owns, but your patrons don't have access to. Yes, I couldn't agree more, especially when you say we have it, but actually, no, not for you. And then Meg, same thing, agreed with Emily. This is a problem. So it's that e-content scoping that can be really frustrating. Okay. And then Ben from Evanston, maybe we need to replace the pack with a more modern discovery layer, such as BiblioCore, that could offer the feature Emily suggested to pull all formats under the same displayed record. Yes, like a Vega or like a BiblioCommons, I think is what you're getting at. Because that format roll up, you do see that more and more. Okay. Great, that's really good feedback. If you have any more thoughts on this, you can always email help@ccslib.org, message me directly, or drop it into the chat as we go through the meeting. But I just wanted to get an idea of how those records were being used. This has been really helpful for me. The other thing I will say is that we are working with 2 libraries right now, Morton Grove and McHenry, just agreed to help us with this, where we have the 2 libraries taking essentially it's stats over like a 7-day period of like how often they're using those e-content records and how. So if your library wants to play a role in that too, again, it's just a 2-question survey for 7 days. That's giving us like a numeric idea about how often those records are used. So if you'd like to get in on that, you can either chat me directly here or message me at help@ccslib.org. And all that is just a 7-day commitment to like monitor those conversations as they happen at the desk, because we want to get an idea of like how often they're happening beyond just like the self-reported survey that I dropped into our chat at the beginning of the discussion. Okay, so I will go ahead and invite Meg to reshare. I'll go ahead and close this topic if no one has anything to add.
All right. Okay, and can everyone see my screen again?
Yes.
All right, excellent. Oops. Okay, so the next topic on our agenda is summer reading vendors. And this is, what vendor are you using to manage your summer reading registration and associated activities? So like Beamstack or others. I can say at Prospect Heights, we are using Read Squared, but feel free to either unmute yourself and talk a little bit about it, or drop it in the chat. And I don't know, Kathleen, did you have more context for that one as well?
This one was just emailed to me directly.
Okay.
And they had asked, hey, can you just bring this up as a topic? Because it seemed like everyone was kind of floating over to Beanstack, but Read Squared was one that fewer libraries are using, but I think they might be newer on the scene. So I think it was wanting a comparison between Read Squared versus Beanstack, and if there are any other ones floating out there. So it seems like from the comments, Beanstack is like the predominant one, but if like the Read Squared libraries could sort of like weigh in on their experience, we'd love to hear that.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about Read Squared. So we picked that one when we went to an online way to manage it during the pandemic. Before that, we had been very old school paper, like registration and paper logs for the patrons. And so we started using that when we did a little bit of investigation. I think we looked at Beamstack, we looked at Read Squared, and I think there was one other that we looked at. Oh, we used a Reading Record for 1 year before that as kind of a transition year, which was much more bare bones. And we liked that Read Squared had an app that seemed fairly easy to use. And I believe price was also an issue for us. That Read Squared had a pretty good deal going on in 2020. And we've been pretty happy with them. There's some things that, you know, we would love to see change, but for the most part, we've been pretty happy with them. I believe the other reason we went with Read Squared was we felt that Beamstack was too oriented to just youth, and we wanted to have more flexibility in what we asked for the adults to be doing versus the youth versus teen. So I believe that was also a factor as well when we picked it. So, but I am the person in charge of the summer reading software over at Prospect Heights. So if people have specific questions about Read Squared, I'm happy to talk to you if you want to drop me a message later or if you have questions. Oh, Kathleen, you might be muted if you're talking.
I'm sorry. I was going to say it might be helpful to stop the screen share because I see a lot of responses. I don't know if folks want to weigh in with their video. Let me make my way back up top to the responses because I want to make sure these are reflected. So Beanstack's overwhelmingly looks like what everyone has except for Phil at Northbrook. So I don't know if he wants to give us a rundown of what he's experienced with that. But sort of working back through the comments, Michelle says Beanstack, but most of our registration takes in person, taking paper only registrations. Mary Kay at Niles, our adults do not use Beanstack. We are using a simple form embedded in our website. Courtney says we use a database that Anne at Glencoe created years ago with Zoho. That's very impressive. Mary Kay says my assistant, department head, and I both get results. Courtney says ours is for staff use. Patrons register online with a website widget. They use paper forms to keep track of reading. There is not an online component. Mary Kay saying that is interesting, Courtney, good solution. Courtney going on to say we had record levels of participation even through the pandemic. Sounds like Glencoe's using an Excel spreadsheet. And Mary Kay says, yes, the results from our form are dumped into an Excel spreadsheet. And then Jason saying we use Beanstack for our annual summer reading and winter reading challenges. We implement small scale reading challenges throughout the year with Beanstack with the goal of introducing readers to diverse books and celebrating the diversity of our community. And then he's got a couple different options there. And then Anne, which I think Anne, we're going to circle back to here. I'm happy to talk to anyone about the database design with Zoho. I use Zoho database for a lot of form-based submissions at Glencoe, not just the summer reading club. Okay, and then we've got some Google Forms and Zoho. Yeah, so Anne, it looks like a lot of people are really interested in the work that you've done with Zoho. Hopefully I'm saying that program correctly. So if you want to chat with us about it, that would be great.
Sure. I don't have my camera today, but can everybody hear me?
Okay. Yes.
Awesome. All right. So Zoho is basically a web-based low-code platform that allows you to make things that are along the lines of Google Forms, but a little bit more enhanced. So you can have a public-sized side form that looks like a relatively basic form, and then it will collect data, and then you can customize that and then edit the entries. So when I built it at Morton Grove, almost 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, I think it was relatively simple. I still use different versions of those in my work at Glencoe. So for example, our incident reports come through Zoho. And the nice thing about that is, let's say you have like specific names of prizes that you want to give away or specific milestones or other things. You're not just seeing a spreadsheet like in Google Forms. You can see on the back end an entry that's editable. So I could see, oh, I've given this person a prize, and my staff can go in and check that I've given them this prize. So, it is nice because you can use other, for lack of a better term, other sources in Zoho to generate the names of your prizes so that they appear on the forms. It takes somebody with I'd say Excel type skills and basic understanding of database and coding rules, but you don't have to know any kind of code to do it. So we do pay an annual subscription fee. It is less than Beanstack. But at the end of the day, we decided to go with Beanstack because we wanted, there was a time where we felt like we wanted our patrons to have like a more robust online registration system. But I'll tell you at this point, most people are using paper logs, and we just use Beanstack for the staff backend. I hope that all made sense. And if anyone has any questions, I can talk about it, or I could screen share or something like that.
Does the Zoho, I shouldn't have called the Zoho. Does
Yeah.
Zoho have a, like, it sounds like it might have like a reporting aspect too, like where you can, you know what I mean? Would it be?
Yes. Yes, it absolutely has a reporting aspect. So you can make dashboards for reporting. So again, you can custom build your reporting dashboard, and then it can show you your results. It also has email notification figures. So, for example, with our incident report, once that incident report is sent, depending on how it's marked, whether it's marked confidential or public, it either gets sent to certain members of the management team or to the entire staff, so that nobody has to do a manual process to let people know that an incident report has been submitted. And then, for example, if we wanted to look up to see if people who were involved in a recent incident had been involved in previous incidents, we can search that database very easily to find that.
That's really cool. I guess, and this will be my last question. I promise I won't make you do like a Zoho demo. Did you find when you were using it for like patron facing interactions, did you have like a level of customizability with it where you were able to, customization, were you able to like change branding colors and like sort of make it like a seamless part of your website? Or did it have that same feel Google Form has where it's just like embedded and it's there?
It was more just embedded and it's there. It does
Okay.
work out of an iframe, so you can embed it so that it's, in your website. And you have depending on your subscription, you have a certain number of public embeds available. But that said, I really didn't explore that. And I know that there are some ways to apply CSS to the forms and things like that.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's really helpful. Were there any other Zoho questions? Okay. Great. Thank you for sharing that. So it sounded like we had one other Read Squared library who was Northbrook, is what I was seeing in the comments. So I know way back in the day when I worked at Northbrook, you were Beanstack Library. So can I ask why the jump to Read Squared?
Sure. So, hi, this is Phil at Northbrook. I am not positive why we switched, and I can tell you that we're going to be switching again. But I mean, Read Squared, our experience with that from a staff perspective, it's pretty easy to move somebody if they've already been involved in other reading programs. Some of the terminology I think is not super intuitive for staff, and I feel like we need a whole like rundown of what different things mean in Read Squared each time summer reading is coming up. But it's not too bad. And I think it's pretty nice on our website for the patrons. From what I've experienced at the desk too, I'll echo what people are saying, where the majority of our adult participants are using the paper forms. But yeah, I think we are switching to Beanstack shortly, but we're still on Read Squared right now.
That is really helpful. And I believe we're like in a world domination of summer reading by Beanstack. They're taking it over. Let's see. John at Wilmette says, I feel like ours is super simple. You're basically just using Google Forms. Okay. And we've had a couple more comments come in. Just that a lot of folks are using Microsoft Forms or Google Forms. So just keeping it really easy. Okay. But for the most part, it sounds like Beanstack dominates what folks are using. All right. That's really helpful. Okay, Meg, whenever you're ready, I think we can move on to the next requested topic.
All right. Share. Sorry. Don't know why it's not. Sorry, I don't know why my PowerPoint isn't showing up as an option for my Windows to share. 1 second.
I can definitely just ask the question too.
Yeah,
It's
I
like
was gonna
not,
say, yeah. I was gonna say, if I can't bring it up, so the next one is also related to summer reading, and it is, how do you use your Power Pack to promote your summer reading program?
and this one was definitely like a plant by me, as I'm always interested in to see how people are leveraging Power Pack, if at all, to promote summer reading. Is there anything special that you're doing, whether it be like carousels or using those web parts, or even is there something you wish you could do that Power Pack doesn't do currently to help promote summer reading and get folks engaging with the different titles at your library? I have Emily at Parkridge saying just a banner under the default search bar. Okay. I know that Gray's Lake has a beautiful banner image like that too right now. If you visit their pack, their graphic artist has created a really great, they had like a countdown to summer reading there for a while where you could sort of like pre-register or pre-know about it. And then they had dropped in an image that said, hey, come on in and register for summer reading. But it's nice because that shows up on all their OPACs in the library. Okay, Michelle says, we're not at the moment, it's just on the website. Okay. Okay, Jason at Fox River Valley says no summer reading info at all in Power Pack. Nancy at Crystal Lake, same thing where they have that banner in the OPAC. And same with Meg. All on our website, not in the OPAC. Okay. All right, so it seems like 75% are like, no, like we're not using that in OPAC, and then 25% have some kind of banner. John says, do you mean on the catalog page itself or use graphics below or near the search bar? I can show you exactly what they mean, John. Let me pull up the Gray's Lake example because I think they've done a really good job of it. And they use this to promote a lot of programs too. And I think some libraries might not know that this is always an option. So let me load up their pack and show you my example. Meg, are you okay if I share my screen? You don't mind? All right, so this is what's being referred to. They have a little banner for their summer reading challenge. And I know they switched this out for everything from like, there's like an art show kind of thing that happens in Gray's Lake. So they'll put up a notification about that. They had like a countdown to summer reading here. I think a year or two ago, Huntley had even like a summer reading video here. But the nice thing about it is that because this is the homepage for your OPAC in the library, patrons pass it and they actually see they see like the front end of the pack and like, oh, summer reading's happening or winter reading or whatever special challenge is happening at your library. But it's this space right here where they've dropped that in. Everybody has this like kind of custom area in the pack where you can put in any sort of HTML that you like. I think even taking a step further, for example, like when NETCA has done a really good job of like, they've got their library of things linked from here, and then that will go back to their website where patrons can see what types of library that things are carried. But the nice thing is that because this sort of serves as like your homepage for the OPAC, you can quickly like point to different things in your library, and patrons that are physically in the library will see this linked from the front, even if they never search for it from home. Okay, I'll stop that share. Okay. All right, that's fine. That might be a short-lived conversation.
I was gonna say, yeah, it might be. Not sure if there's anything else in the chat. Nope, just, all right. Sounds good. Okay. So then the very last thing we have on our agenda, because yeah, for whatever reason, Zoom has decided that my PowerPoint is no longer actually a window, even though I can see it, is the CCS offices move. So Kathleen, that's your topic.
Yeah, so if you've ever gone to our offices in Arlington Heights, you know they're down like a labyrinth of a parking lot. They're very difficult to find, and we have a lot of space. I think there was a time when CCS perhaps like had 20, 30 employees. Now there's 9 of us. This is much smaller than we used to be, and our new offices will be smaller to reflect that. But we're moving to Lincolnshire. We also have some really great training spaces at the new offices. And the ability to host meetings in person again. So it's very exciting. So our next PASS meeting will be in person in September. So it will be hosted at the new CCS offices. I can drop the address for that in the chat. You also see it reflected on our website starting next Monday is like our first official day in those new CCS offices. So it's really just like an address change. It really won't affect much of the way we do business with libraries. It's just that we have that ability to actually host meetings in person now. And we've got 4 really nice conference rooms where we can do in-person training. And it's a really nice space and we're very excited about it. And that new address, I'll go ahead and drop that in the chat so you have it early should you wish to save it. But otherwise it'll be on all of our websites and communications going forward. But it's right off of like 94 and Half Day Road. So that's that. Yeah, we're excited about it.
Yes, and I know that your big move is coming up next week, which is why we had to switch the meeting date from originally it was going to be June 15th. And so thank you all to coming a week early because it could have been a little hectic for, especially on Kathleen's end, because they would be moving all the furniture out that day. So
Yes.
one less thing for Kathleen to worry about.
Yeah,
So
I
thank you
appreciate the
all
flexibility.
to
Yeah.
being able to move to that date. So, all right. So that was the last item I had on the agenda for today. Our next meeting is in September, at which time you'll have Jason as your chair and Henry as your vice chair. So welcome to them, and it will be out in Lincolnshire. So with that, I will call for a motion to adjourn. You all want to stay?
Michelle says
All
I
right, here we
motion
go.
to adjourn.
All right, and we got 2 seconds. All right, excellent. Well, thank you all for your time this morning. There will be minutes soon. The recording will go up pretty soon. So if anybody missed it or you had anyone that you needed to go back and look at stuff before the minutes come out, we'll have that as well. So thank you all very much, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
All right. Thank you, Meg. Bye.